Hello, hello, hello. This is V Scott coming at you with another news story. This news story is actually um, disgusting to me and it's just disturbing. And we're gonna just go ahead and I'm gonna go ahead and give it to you. A white New York Police Department officer broke into a black woman's home and threatened her. Activists want him fired. The officer was in Tennessee for a bachelor party when he broke into a home next to his group's Airbnb. He can be heard on video uttering threats using racial slurs. This is just so disturbing. A white officer with the New York Police Department should be fired after he was sentenced last month for breaking into a black woman's home and threatening her, said activists who gathered in Lower Manhattan on New Year's Day. Officer Michael J. Reynolds, 26, who is on modified duty status subject to an investigation, pleaded no contest to multiple counts of assault with fear of bodily injury and aggravated criminal trespass, according to criminal court records in Davidson County, Tennessee, which says he barged into a woman's home. Reynolds was in Tennessee with two other police officers who haven't been identified in July 2018 for a bachelor party. Mm-mm-mm. Reynolds forced his way into the home next to the Airbnb accommodations that he and several other men, including the two officers, had rented, where Constance Hillerburton lived with her children, according to court documents. He can be heard on surveillance video threatening Hillerburton, saying he'd break every effing bone in your effing neck, and using racial slurs. Investigators said Reynolds left only after Hillerburton said police were nearby, according to court documents. And why is he on modified duty? Why is he not actually fired? Is my question. Let me continue on. Reynolds said in court that he didn't remember what he said during his sentencing. He said he had no intention on getting as drunk as he did that night. Court transcripts show, I'm truly sorry for everything that has happened to you and your family within the last year and half of and half and half and half and for everything to come in the future. It was honestly an accident. I had no intention on getting that intoxicated that night. If I could take it back, I definitely would. I definitely would have never came to that bachelor party, he said, according to court records. No, it was no accident. He meant what he did. He did what he meant to do while he was intoxicated. He meant to go and break into that lady's home and threaten that black lady. He didn't think that he would be caught because he was out of state in Tennessee. He was not in New York, and so he thought that there would be no consequences to his actions. But there are some consequences, but they aren't really real consequences, from what I'm saying, because he is still actually he's on modified duty, so that's not a real consequence. He's not fired. And then it seemed like there was a threat when he said for everything to come in the future. What does that mean? What does that mean? Because she's standing up for herself against you, the officer that broke in her home and threatened her while her children was there. That there's going to be consequences for her, sir. I don't know what that means. So that's where I'm at with that. Let me finish reading this. This is just ridiculous. In court transcript, in court transcripts, 20th District Criminal Court Judge Mark J. Fishburne ex- Fishburne extradited Reynolds and sentenced him to 15 days in jail for The break in, along with assessing court fees of more than $1,000. Mm. Reynolds will be on unsupervised probation for nearly 3 years. Why is he on unsupervised probation? He needs to be on supervised probation. Actually, he needs to be in jail. He needs to be in prison and locked up. Michael Reynolds is a violent, dangerous racist who has no business carrying either a badge or a gun, Daniel Horowitz, Halliburton's attorney, said in an email to NBC News on Wednesday. Ms. Halliburton wants the New York Police Department to fire him immediately so that he can't hurt anyone else. And we are frankly dumbfounded that it has not happened already. Yeah, I mean, I'm not understanding myself. What is this? What is that about? Horwitz added that Halliburton was encouraged that the process to terminate Officer Reynolds is now finally underway and look forward to the conclusion of the process and the investigation that New York City Civilian Complaint Review Board undertakes regarding this matter. New York police declined to provide a statement on record. Reynolds' attorney didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. I bet he didn't. I bet he didn't. This client, Since news of the attack broke, more than 11,700 people have signed a petition advocating that Reynolds be fired on Wednesday. A group of protesters and activists gathered in New York. We are still in the fight because injustice persists as long as injustice persist. The people must be equally persistent. Tamika Mallory, former executive director of the National Action Network, the National National Action Network, the civil rights advocacy group founded by MSNBC host Al Sharpton, said at news conference. Kristen John Foy, head of the National Action Network Brooklyn chapter, said he believed Reynolds should face domestic terrorism charges. I do too. We see no charges related to domestic terrorism. He broke into their home while they were in bed, threatened them, held them captive in their own bed. Foy said, "Our presence here today is to demand answers from the New York Police Department about about why Michael Reynolds is still employed as a New York Police Department officer." Foy said the news conference was held on New Year's Day to set a tone of accountability for the year coming, for the coming year. Uh, 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 uh. Addressing New York Mayor Bill de Blasio and Police Commissioner DeMont Shea, Foy said, you have an opportunity to start the new year off right, to make a declaration that New York City police officers are not allowed to break into homes and engage in hate crimes, to engage in felonious acts. The Reverend Johnny Green, senior pastor of Mount Nebo Baptist Church of Harlem, said he hadn't anticipated having to challenge the city and its mayor to simply do the right thing on the first day of the new year. He said that the activists weren't anti-police, but they simply wanted accountability. And I mean, that's really it. To be pro people, pro community does not equal anti police. We all need the police. We all know the role that the police play, Green said. I think it has been stated already that unacceptable behavior of Mike Reynolds and two unnamed officers, he said, I think their behavior and actions are domestic terrorism. Horowitz Halliburton attorney said his client was grateful for the activists and supporters who have called for Reynolds' firing. Ms. Halliburton deeply appreciates the outpouring of support that she has received from people across the country who agree that Michael Reynolds needs to be fired and should no longer be able to work as a police officer, Horwitz said. Hmm, that's what Horwitz said. And that's what I agree with. I agree that this officer does not need to be a police officer anymore. I agree that this officer needs to be fired, and they need to go ahead and identify those two other officers that was involved with this mess because they broke into someone's home. They broke into this black lady's home. He did threaten the lady. And I'm sure that they were involved in some type of way, but they're not saying what type of way that the other two officers were involved because they would not be mentioned in this if they were not involved in some type of capacity with this. So they should all definitely be fired, not be allowed to ever be on the police force again. And I believe that they should do some time. They should go ahead and do some time in prison because this was a violation, a total violation. And yes, I agree that they should be charged with criminal terrorism for breaking in that lady's home the way that they did while they were sleeping. Because if the shoe was on the other foot, we already know how it would be, right? We already know that they would be locking the black officer up. The black officer would be charged with all kind of things, if they had broke into a white woman's home and threatened her and used any type of racial slurs against her. So why is it that the black lady can't get the same respect? Why is it that the black lady is not getting what is due? She is due justice, and she is not receiving the justice that she is due. Everyone is entitled to justice out here, and I see that we as black women and black men don't get the justice that we are due a lot of times. This lady was violated in her own home while she was sleeping by an officer that's supposed to protect and serve. What did he do? He came into her home and violated her home, violated where she lived. Who knows what kind of nightmares this lady is now having? Who knows what kind of nightmares her children have now? We don't know. You need to go ahead and prosecute this man to the fullest extent, is what I say. And that's how I feel about it. Sick and tired of the injustice for our people. I am. We are always on the back end getting crapped on, not getting real justice at all. This is no good. He up here on modified duty. No, he didn't need to be on modified duty. He needed to be fired immediately and then getting prosecuted to the full extent of the law. 15 days was not enough in jail for him. He broke in somebody's home. He's an officer. He's supposed to be held up to a higher standard of the law. And you know that. So y'all need to go ahead and get it together and prosecute him to the fullest extent like he is supposed to be. So that's my thoughts on that. And I just want to say thank you for listening. I know I got a little heated, but that's just how I felt. That's how I felt. So I said what I said because that's how I felt, and I just want to say thank you for listening. I appreciate you for listening, and let's just make sure that we are um, actually doing the right thing out here as far as justice for everyone, not just some. Thank you. Have a great one.